It's really bad because my computer is 3 seconds behind when I'm looking at here on my MacBook or my iPad. So, I'm trying to time this all right. I'm like, oh, okay, we're actually live. And then this thing doesn't tell me I'm live for another 3 seconds. It's like a tape delay. Welcome, everybody, to another exciting episode of Under the Dome. I'm your host, Alan Ulrich, here with Bob Rose. I have a voice tonight. I still cough a little bit, but not nearly the way I was coughing last Tuesday night. You would not have gotten a show. You would have gotten somebody who sounds like they got COVID or something, or tuberculosis, or the whooping cough, whatever. How you doing tonight, Bob?
I'm hanging in there. I hope you were recovered in time to enjoy the 4th, and hope you guys had a good weekend down there.
I did. I was fine by Wednesday night, actually. I still have a little bit of cough. It always hangs around like that unwanted in-law. But I was fine by Thursday, so it was good. It was good. I did my normal 4th of July routine. I watched Jaws. I watched The Patriot. Gotta get good with the bad here, But yeah, that's kind of like my 4th of July routine. It was really, I had a really laid back 4th of July. It's just too hot, unless I'm going somewhere on vacation or I have access to a swimming pool all day. I'm not spending much time outside right now. I don't get that nice, cool weather that you got up there in Pittsburgh.
I don't know. The last couple of days, it's been the mid 90s. The difference is we get humidity, but we don't get humidity even comparative to what y'all get down there. And that's what I tell people up here that when they complain about the humidity and oh man, this heat is too much. I'm like, I chuckle. I'm like, I could tell how little you've traveled in your life.
Mm-hmm. It's just overbearing. That's really what gets you. It's so crushing. I was out. I think it was Friday. Friday, I took Friday off of work. Just have a 4-day weekend, and I was trying to clean out my car, just vacuum a little bit inside the car and that kind of stuff. And I can just feel the sweat just running down. I'm not even doing anything. Sweat's rolling down my back, the whole bit. It's like Rosanna Anadana. I got a little ball of sweat on the end of my nose, and no matter which way I turn it, it's still there. Those of you who are under the age of 40 do not know who Rosanna Anadana was, but that was her shtick about Dr. Joyce Brothers and having a little ball of sweat on the end of her nose. So, old Saturday Night Live skit.
Mm-hmm.
So we have coming up the next week, the 58th training camp for the Saints. The rookies first come in for a few days. And I think that's I think it's next Friday. I think they're in for the weekend. And then on the 22nd, I believe the Saints veterans come in. And then the 24th is the first official practice. It's hard to believe.
Yeah.
The season's on us already. It's like when you were a little kid, Christmas seemed to take forever.
Mm-hmm.
And now it's like, holy shit, it's Christmas again.
Mm-hmm.
It's holy shit, it's another season already.
And summer's over halfway complete. And
yep.
I don't need to tell you, but I will say this out to our younger viewers. Stop rushing time, because I swear to Christ, it accelerates more and more as the older you get. And that's not a lie.
No. I was thinking about this the other day. So it will be 24 years this December since Hakeem dropped the ball. How in the hell is that 24 years ago?
Right.
The Saints 1991 season, the 25th anniversary season, that is more than 27. What is do the math real quick, Alan. 25 is 50 plus 8, 30, 33 years it's been. That's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That is unbelievable. And for so long, it seemed like the first decade, 20 years, and because a little losing, but the first 20 years of Saints history seemed like it just took forever. These guys, this was happening forever. And now it's like, yeah, boom, this is gone. Boom, this happened. Boom, we're at this point, so it's just, I was thinking about this today because you heard the news about Bernie Kosar. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Okay, Bernie Kosar has been officially diagnosed, I believe, with Parkinson's, and he also has. Somebody just told me a few minutes ago, and I've forgotten. I think it's Parkinson's and some other serious illness.
Yeah, that sucks.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, Parkinson's and liver failure.
Oh my God.
Liver failure, yeah.
I mean, I've seen pictures of him relatively recently, and yeah, he just he hasn't looked good for quite some time. It's
No.
just that's a shame to hear. Seemed like a good guy, definitely an underrated quarterback when he played. And I've never been a Browns fan per se, but Bernie was fun to watch. He's a good quarterback.
Well, I mean, he was your quarterback you were against for the two most famous Broncos plays.
Yep.
The drive and the fumble.
Yep.
The fumble's what really kills me. That the drive, okay, your defense collapsed, but it only tied the game, and your offense couldn't finish the game. So that's why the Browns lost. But the fumble, Ernest Biner, and I saw both of these games live on television. I wasn't there, but I mean, I watched both those games on television, and I had my arms up saying touchdown. When
you had your arms up, I had my arms like that.
Yeah. I'm like, oh, touchdown! They got the revenge. And next thing I know, I see everybody scrambling, and I see I can't think of the Bronco player's name now.
Jeremiah Castile.
Jeremiah Castile had the ball up in his hands. I'm like, what in the hell just happened? And Ernest, I can't think of his name either. The NBC announcer,
Dick Enberg.
Dick Enberg. Oh my, that, and I was like, oh my God, it happened to him again.
Yeah.
And Ernest Biner unfortunately got chased out of Cleveland for that.
Mm-hmm.
And he wins the Super Bowl later on with the Redskins. But as far as everyone remembers, Ernest Biner is the guy who fumbled. Just as you're about to score. Yeah, and they had a great replay of it from the reverse angle where you can see that he clearly fumbles the ball before he breaks the plane. Because at first I'm like, oh no, he broke the plane. Doesn't matter if he fumbled. If he broke the plane, that's a touchdown. I'm like, oh shit, no, he didn't.
Yep.
And Cleveland being on television after Christmas for the playoffs was a common thing, especially with Marty Schottenheimer was like, I watched the Buffalo Cleveland playoff game where you see the famous footage of Don Beebe getting flipped over and landing on his head, in that Cleveland dirt. So yeah, it's just I feel for Cleveland because I know I was there. I was at that game. No, I was not at any of these Cleveland games, but I feel for Cleveland because I go all the way back to watching Mistake on the Lake.
Yep.
Red Right 88. I liked the play call. I can't believe the execution.
Yeah.
Because I'm not one of these people like, oh, they should have kicked the field goal. They should have kicked the field goal. You couldn't. The win was bad. He'd already missed a couple, and you're going for the win. Yeah, you would have won with a field goal too, but I understand you still have a down in your back pocket. So if you don't get it, you can kick the field goal.
Yep.
But yeah, it's just unbelievable. We look at the Saints and think about what a horrible history that has and stuff is and everything. But then you look at Cleveland and you go, you know what? I don't know what's worse. Never winning until 21 years or winning, getting to the AFC Championship, getting to the playoffs, and finding ways to lose in the playoffs. That would be that to me. That's even more painful.
Yeah. Picture it this way, for you Saints fans, you went through, the Minneapolis and the Minnesota loss, in 17-18, and then the Goodell screw job in 18-19. What Cleveland did that 4 times against Denver 3 times, and then and the Oakland wild card playoff loss, or actually that was divisional round, right?
That was divisional, yeah.
The Oakland wild card loss with Brian Sipe and Sam Martigliano. So I mean, they did that 4 times in 8 years. So that's literally double what Saints fans had to deal with. With Sean Payton and Drew Brees.
Yeah, and so you win all these games and you get everyone excited, and it's almost like the Jim Mora years. You're going, okay, but we haven't won the playoffs yet. We have to win in the playoffs. If we don't win in the playoffs, our whole season is wasted.
Yeah.
And you think about, the Jim Mora years with the 92 playoff loss to the Eagles, 91 loss to the Falcons. I mean, you won the division, you won a ton of games, and you still found a way to lose in the postseason. You just could not get over that hump. I'm sorry, why are they remaking this or making a sequel to this movie?
Because writers and directors have zero imagination, so they have to remake everything.
You cannot do that. That is one of the best movies ever made. You just can't do it. I mean, I'm sorry. And it was a good movie because none of us expected this. No, I mean, when Gladiator came out, now I promise you, Saints fans, we will get to the Saints again. But I just saw that ad. When Gladiator came out, no one knew what this thing was going to be about. No one really knew any of these characters. And Ridley Scott, aliens and things like that. But they make this movie and you're like going, really? Really? This is an incredible movie. Marcus Aurelius is awesome. Maximus is incredible. Great lines to quote, and then I'm sorry, very few sequels live up or surpass the original. I can only think of about a handful. Godfather 2, Empire Strikes Back. Though most of the time you end up with Jaws 2, Breaking 2, Electric Boogaloo. You end up with these Grease 2. Just movies that you're like, oh, why? It's very difficult. Okay. Wes Chandler, 1978, rookie year training camp. I found this footage one day. This is a Miami news broadcast talking about the Saints, and it's actually pretty interesting. And the Saints were in Vero Beach at the time, so that's why Miami was covering them. They show a brief clip. I didn't get a chance to point it out, but they show a brief clip of the Saints in Mexico City, which was one of the first international preseason games. So yeah, it's this is an interesting clip. It really is nice. Dick Nolan, head coach, because you didn't get to see this very much as a kid. You saw a little bit of stock footage and stuff like that in preseason. Never saw the preseason games on television if they were played at home. networks rarely carried them. You saw preseason games the day after. I would
Yeah.
see preseason games on Sundays.
And even then, you wouldn't see them in their entirety. They would keep switching from game to game to game. Like you said, the 6 o'clock news and 11 o'clock news, whoever the sports anchor was, there'd be like a 3 minute, 3 minute clip on it with some highlights in the background. And the preseason games, themselves, you got to listen to on the radio, and that was it.
Yeah. And, the way they played preseason back then was very different from the way they do today. Back then, they were trying to get these guys into shape. They came to training camp to get into shape. So you saw the starters play a lot. And they would mix and match rookies with starters or free agents with starters a lot. So, it wouldn't be unusual to see, this era, Archie Manning out there with a couple of rookies playing in the third quarter. Bobby Scott maybe came in the second quarter, and look at Conrad Doldrums with the big old club on his hand. You would see Bobby Scott out there with Chuck Muncie and Tony Gallup. Oh, that looks great, good job. And that's what the preseason looked like. Fumbled handoffs and stuff. Yeah. Fun times. But the Saints went to Vero Beach, the home of the Dodgers. They trained there, I think, from 70 or 71 to 85. With 1 year they went, and 75, I think they were in Thibodeau. But for the most part, they stayed at Vero Beach until they started going to lacrosse. It's been a relatively recent thing. The Saints would train at home. The Saints are going to UC Irvine this year. The first time they have gone away for training camp since the days of, the infamous Greenbrier. How do you feel about the Saints going away to training camp?
Alan, from the team aspect, I don't mind it. Now, from a media aspect, it sucks because John Hendricks, Ross Jackson, they are going out to cover training camp. They're covering training camp like they typically do, but they won't be able to be there the whole time because that money comes out of their pocket. That's one of the reasons why, with the Saints, even when they had training camp in Metairie or around the New Orleans area, I would just take my usual long family vacation sometime during training camp, because I was like, okay, we have beat writers that are going to be covering the camp stories. I'm just going to take a few days off and throw out some historical pieces from the beach, that kind of thing. From the media aspect of it, selfishly, I say it sucks. But for the team aspect, I think it can be a good thing if it's handled correctly by the team, because you're getting away from home. You're getting away from all the noise and all the distractions of the local media. And I said, there will be media still there. But in other words, you're closed off a little bit more. It kind of promotes, in my opinion, more of a team closeness. And after what we've seen with the New Orleans Saints the last couple years, I don't think that could be a bad thing. I'm not going to say that there has been discourse or dissension, but there's been waves that's made us, outsiders and semi-outsiders. It's made us wonder amongst ourselves what's really going on in that locker room, what's really going on in those team facilities. Well, like I said, now you're away from all that. And I know there's still social media and all that kind of bullshit, but at the end of the day, all day, and at the end of the day, you're with your teammates and your teammates alone. You're not going home to your wife and kids. You're staying in the dorms and it used to, in the old days, it used to be the dorms. Now I'm sure they're luxury suites and things like that. But again, you're still with your teammates 24/7 for the time that you're away. So frankly, if I'm a coach, I love it.
Well, and that's my thinking here is, I know in 2006, when the Saints went to Jackson, Mississippi, Millsaps College, that team bonded, and it bonded very quickly. Now, granted, it was post Hurricane Katrina. You know, you're trying to get the dome ready. These guys didn't really have a house to stay in. The facility wasn't ready and all that stuff. But you helped kind of bond this team and get this team together. And I think, like you said, it felt like last year it took a long time for this team to get back on the same page. When you didn't have Drew Brees and Sean Payton and the guys who had been on this team for 8-10 years, the very, very veteran laden roster. It took a while for the leadership to kind of get a hold of its, of what this team was supposed to be about, what this team's identity was. And I think this is the good time for a team to build that identity. You've got an all new offensive coaching staff.
Yep.
You've got a lot of guys that are looking to prove themselves, guys looking for opportunities to prove themselves. I like that they're getting away. I know the fans love going out there in the morning, in the afternoon, seeing them actually practice, go out there, get autographs, all that stuff. And I get all that. But at the same time, I don't know. I just feel like, especially with so many changes on the roster, they kind of need that time to to bond and get everybody focused on football, not focused on, I'm going home, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. Just get to that time. I don't know. I'm old school, I guess. I just feel like they need that training camp. They need that dorm room. They need that just isolation from all the other distractions, all the noise.
And I think, again, if it's handled right now, this is going to be a key moment for Dennis Allen and this staff, because they're the ones that's going to have to spearhead this. But if it's handled right, I think that it could be a very, very good thing for team camaraderie going into the season.
Well, all the things that we're talking about with the problems with the receivers being on the same page with Derek Carr, I think this is the time to have those meetings. This is the time to have that time in there, because, well, where else are you going? You're not going anywhere else, and UC Irvine is where they are this year. They haven't been out in California since the 60s, not counting Katrina, the Katrina year when it went to Oakland and spent the rest of the time out there in California. They get to scrimmage with the 49ers, who are one of the best teams in the NFC, probably arguably one of the best teams in the league. Great measuring stick. Mora, when he had the team up in lacrosse, they would scrimmage with the Vikings. They would scrimmage with the Chiefs, because you had what they call that league, the Cheese League, where you had 3 or 4 teams all practicing or having training camp right around each other. So you'd have good opportunities to see if your team measures up with the other teams. The Jim Moore, famous Jim Moore soundbite when he's talking about the Saints getting their ass kicked by the Chiefs, 92. That was up in lacrosse. I mean, the Vikings, they always seem to do well in training camp with the Vikings, but when they have to play them in the regular season, they got destroyed by the Vikings. So, but it was still and the weather was good for it. You can get a lot of work done outside. You think about in New Orleans, you're going to do X amount of hours outside, but you're also very aware of the heat. And most time they move the second practice, indoors. So how many practices have the fans really seen anyway? And they moved it indoors because, people still believe and I kind of fall in that category sometimes. They still believe, oh, the heat makes you tough. The heat makes you, you build up that endurance. No, no, no. That's not how this is going to go. That's not the way.
No.
These guys are training year round. There's no endurance anymore. There's no using training camp to get into shape. That doesn't exist. That's this era here.
Right.
That's not the era of today. To me, you just get a lot more accomplished in good weather. The reason why the Saints did so poorly wasn't because they were up in the Greenbrier. It's because that team stunk.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. And I don't get me wrong. I love the 3 years that they were in Greenbrier because I went all 3 years, and 2 of those years I spent an extensive. I think it's 2015. I spent a total of 10 days, in the Greenbrier, and then then a total of 9 days in Virginia Beach. I think we went 4 or 5 days to Greenbrier, went 9 days to Virginia Beach, and then hit Greenbrier for 5 days on the way home. So I mean that was the best summer of my life since I stopped playing beach volleyball. But yeah, I mean, I love Greenbrier because it was so close to where I lived. And but you're right. That had nothing to do with leadership. It had nothing to do with the soft practices. Those teams just stunk. Look at the rosters, people. Look at the drafts. Look at the free agent signings. They were just bad football teams.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Rob Ryan was not an attention to detail kind of guy. That showed up as the season went along. That's why Dennis Allen was brought in, because he was an attention to detail guy. And yeah, those defenses, you look at the roster, and people make fun of it all the time, but you look at the players they have on that roster. Daniel Ellerby. Is this the week he plays? Is this the week he's injured again? Who's your pass rushers? You had that guy that they tried to sign him from I think the Ravens, and then he went to Cleveland instead. He was defensive end, and then when Cleveland realized he wasn't producing anymore, they let him go, and the Saints go and pick him up, and he really didn't do anything.
Paul Kruger.
That's what it was. Paul Kruger. So, and then you had Brandon Browner, Jarius Byrd. Is he going to play? Is he not going to play? They were bad, and that's why they lost. Practicing in New Orleans wasn't going to make them a better team.
No.
So, with that in mind, what do you think? If you had to list 10 players or 5 players, I'll make it easy on you. Who has to have a great camp this year for the Saints to be successful?
I mean, yeah. Let's rule out the obvious culprits, because they need Derek Carr to get a quick handle on the offense. They need Alvin Kamara to be crisp in this offense. They need the offensive line, as a unit, to work together well and develop quickly. Let's rule out those culprits. The number 1A and 1B for me, and of equal importance, Chase Young and Trevor Penning. They both have to have fantastic camps. I'm not talking in the preseason games, although I'm hoping that Kubiak and DA go against recent conventional wisdom. The recent conventional wisdom of, we don't want our starters to play a whole lot of reps. If anybody needs the reps, it's Trevor Penning. Now Chase Young, on the other hand, you don't expect him to get many, maybe not even any reps during a couple of those preseason games. But that doesn't mean that he can't show up in camp. That doesn't mean that he can't show out in the scrimmages against the 49ers, which, like you said, I'm going to be keeping a close eye on those ones. So 1A, 1B for me are Trevor Penning, Chase Young.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll start there. Are we going back and forth or?
Well, if you have a handful of names off the top of your head, go ahead, and I'll throw
Okay.
in a couple of them.
So yeah, those guys for sure. And then, then working my way down the list, um, to have a good camp. I'd say Marshawn Lattimore. Now, I mean, Lattimore typically does have good camps because there was all those training camps where he and
Mm-hmm.
Michael Thomas just went head to head. So Lattimore for me not only has to have a good camp, show that he's healthy and can stay healthy. That obviously has to extend into the regular season. But I mean, Lattimore's one of your team leaders. Even if he isn't a vocal team leader, he's a guy that's been around since 2017, since those recent glory years. So him, Demario Davis, Cam Jordan, they're kind of in the process of passing the torch. Well, to be able to pass the torch, you still have to play reasonably well when you're doing it. Jordan Davis are getting up there in years. Everybody's already assuming that Jordan has declined, past the point of effectiveness. But Davis, Lattimore are still up there. After so many trade rumors this offseason, unfounded, ridiculous, just dumbass trade rumors that were never going to take place, Lattimore is one of those players that you're actually you're happy that the Saints are not around the New Orleans area. Get 23 out, let him be with his teammates, hang out with his teammates, and just embrace that football culture and getting back to what Marshawn Lattimore used to be. So yeah, I'm looking for a good camp from him. Jordan Howden, safety is still a huge concern of mine. You and I have talked about it several times this offseason. They've not really. I like Will Harris. I like the Will Harris signing, but they haven't really done anything to bolster the position. And it feels like they just intend on handing the job over to Jordan Howden, and that's fine if the kid can play. He had a lot of ups and downs as a rookie, and I understand he was a day 3 pick. So anytime you get good snaps out of a day 3 pick, you got yourself a good draft selection. But then to turn around and just hand over the starting job, to me, he didn't look like a star. He didn't look like he was ready to be a consistent starter yet. So he has to show that he can be, because who are you going to turn to if Howden can't play?
Right.
Is it going to be Jonathan Abram? God help us all if it is.
Yeah.
And another guy I'm watching is Willie Gay. Willie Gay, I think, is going to be a huge addition to this defense. But as you know, Alan, Dennis Allen has always asked a lot out of his linebackers, both physically and up here. They have had some physical specimens. I'm talking about you, Stephon Anthony, some physical specimens that just couldn't grasp the game of football, in particular the Saints defense and what Dennis Allen was asking. Gay, watching him in Kansas City, and we get force fed a lot of Chief games, because of the networks. You got to see Willie Gay a lot, and he looks like a very instinctive player to me. I'm hoping that translates over to his time in New Orleans. And I don't want to go all defense here, so I'll go offense. I want to see a big training camp out of Kendre Miller. We believe that he is at least the early favorite to be the number 2 back behind Alvin Kamara, over Jamal Williams. And if you look at this Kubiak offense, and you and I, me and Brandon, we've talked about it a lot. They expect a lot of versatility out of their running backs. They want to get those backs in space. Jamal Williams, I think, could still be effective in this system, but Kendre Miller, he's the type of player, the type of his athleticism, his versatility. If he can play, he can absolutely thrive in what I think that this system is going to be. But he got to stay healthy. That was his big problem last year. And really, he didn't even come into camp healthy. And was kind of working behind the 8 ball from the start. So now, Kendry's had a full off season. We presume he's healthy. If he can stay healthy, and have a big camp, I think that bodes really, really well for this offense.
Well, and it's funny because there are some reports that have been coming out from minicamp and from OTAs that, Trevor Penning didn't look that good. At times he fell down a lot. Kendra Miller seemed to be struggling, and that kind of stuff. And to me, shorts and shells, just like I don't get overly excited when a guy looks really good in shorts and shells, I don't get overly down either on that, because I don't feel like the player is going full speed in shorts and shells, because they can't. So there are times where they're not going to look very good. They're going to look pretty sloppy. So I guess I just feel like, yeah, there are some opportunities out there for these guys. A lot of the guys that you talked about are people I expect to see need to have a great camp. Miller especially, Chase Young especially, Trevor Penning. Another guy I want to see have a big camp, A.T. Perry. We didn't replace Michael Thomas. We need somebody to be that contested catch guy. He showed flashes. It took him a while to come along, but once he did, it seemed like he was that third receiver. We need him to step up. Who's going to be the tight end on this offense? Jimmy Graham is kind of bouncing around. Do I come back? Do I stay? Do I go? And to me, I think it's really up to him. I think there's a good possibility he does come back. But at the same time, he's what, 40, 38, 39 now?
I think he's 38,
38. I mean, he's not a starter anymore. You still need a starting tight end. So I'm concerned about tight end. I'm concerned about safety. We've talked about it over and over and over again about the need for them to get a safety. I can't imagine that they are going to simply say, not just Howden, but simply say, okay, Will Harris, we'll give you a shot, and if worst case scenario, we'll just put I just drew a blank on his name now, but it'll come to me. The nickel cornerback from last year.
Oh, Amadi or Alante Taylor.
Alante Taylor. I can't imagine him saying, okay, we're just going to put Alante Taylor at safety, and we'll roll with it in training camp. I just can't see that, because you're going to set this guy up for failure again, because he needs to have an entire offseason where he's going to prepare himself to be safety. That can't be your fallback option. Your fallback option should be, we're going to bring Justin Blackham. We're going to spend the money and bring Justin Blackham in. We're going to get a safety. We're going to do something. Somebody with experience. And I that's the biggest questions I have coming in training camp. And the guys that you need to step up in those critical positions, that's who has to have a big camp. You need that defensive end. You need that offensive tackle. You need that safety. You need that third wide receiver. Those guys, all the guys we just talked about, they're the guys that have to have big camps. Do you see any dark horses, maybe undrafted free agent guys or anyone like that who could be, hey, this is a guy that possibly could make a name for himself? I mean, I'm not going to say it's going to be the next Adrian Arrington or Andy Tanner or, but is there a guy out there that you're thinking, this guy's not only got a good shot of making the roster, he's got a good shot of being an important player, not an impact player, but an important player on this team?
There are two guys. There's one undrafted rookie, and then there's one free agent signing that I don't think enough people are talking about. The undrafted rookie, and I'm going to, before I say his name, I want to throw the caveat out there that I am not nearly as gaga excited over this guy as a lot of fans saying, oh my God, he's going to be the next superstar. He's going to be the starting tight end. That's Dallin Halker, the tight end from Colorado State. Heck of an athlete. I loved his draft film, both at BYU and Colorado State. I do think that he has a chance, especially now with Jawan Johnson's injury. So those reps are going to be there for him. To kind of the job is his to earn, and it's sitting right there in his hands. So it's going to be easy for him to earn a spot, but the kind of system that he's coming into really bodes well for his type of skill set. But again, just like I keep telling people, you need to calm down. He went undrafted for a reason. I am not automatically assigning a spot to him on on this roster. Yet, do I think he has a nice set of receiving skills and good athleticism? Absolutely. But he's an undrafted guy. I'm not going to anoint him a spot on this team, let alone say that he's going to be the next Rashid Shaheed or Carl Granderson, or any one of those free agent, college players, college rookies that made almost instant impacts. Do I see the possibility? Yeah, but I'm not going to automatically anoint it. Outside of that, I don't. I was not overly impressed by their group of undrafted rookies this year. It was a lot of offensive linemen and a lot of defensive backs. A couple wideouts too. I like the Tipton kid, the wide receiver from Yale. He has nice athleticism. Love his hands. At least from the Yale film, I was able to get a hold of. And as you know, Alan, with the Saints, you never rule out an undrafted wide receiver. There seems to be a guy almost every year. Maybe not a guy that makes an instant difference like a Shaheed or a Deontay Harris, but at least a guy that manages to stick on the roster, and contribute for a couple games. Keith Kirkwood kind of guy. So I never rule that out. And the other guy, the free agent side, veteran free agent signing that I don't think enough people are talking about, that I think is a sneaky good pickup, is Cedric Wilson. We talk about A.T. Perry, and I love A.T. Perry. You know that I loved A.T. Perry and his junior year at Wake Forest. And I do think that A.T. is ultimately going to be the third wideout. But people forget how good Cedric Wilson was for the Dallas Cowboys. Cedric kind of got lost on the roster with the Miami Dolphins the last 2 years because of that track team that they have down there. And Cedric's not that kind of guy. He's more of a guy that can work the intermediate zones, a run after the catch guy, be a safety valve for a quarterback, a security blanket. And a guy able to take the top off the defense, yes, but not a guy that's going to scare defenses week in and week out with that deep speed. Well, you just said it yourself. What are the Saints looking for? They're looking for a guy to take that Michael Thomas role, that Jimmy Graham role, a guy that's going to work the intermediate areas of the field, a guy that's going to force those safeties to cheat up to open up the deep shots, a guy that's going to force those linebackers to drop back a little bit further to open up the underneath for Kamara or whoever else from the backfield. Cedric Wilson can be that guy.
It's interesting because we're hearing a lot of Taysom Hill out there and all the different ways they're going to use Taysom Hill. So it would be interesting to see if Cedric Wilson, where he fits in with that, because a lot of people think Taysom Hill is going to be that guy. I'm kind of like you. There's no one really who jumps out at me in the undrafted free agent market that the guys they signed. The tight end, obviously. There's the other tight end I keep hearing about is is his name Jackson? I keep
Jacobson, Michael Jacobson.
Michael Jacobson.
Mm-hmm.
I knew it wasn't Michael Jackson, but I knew it was Michael something. But yeah, that's somebody I hear his name get mentioned a lot.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm curious to see how he does as well, because as we said, the tight end room is wide open. You've got Foster Moreau, and that's really it, because the injury to Juwan Johnson and the lack of experience depth behind him, you have a good shot. Both those guys have good shots of making the team and possibly having a little bit of an impact.
Yeah.
If they can be on their field and kind of grasp this offense. I've said for years the Saints need to to draft a tight end. They need to get a tight end because this league, aside from mobile quarterback driven, it's tight end driven too. You look at teams that have that difference maker tight end, they're the teams that are in the playoffs. They're the teams that challenge you. You know, I'm thinking like the Baltimore Ravens, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Philadelphia Eagles, the San Francisco 49ers, even the Los Angeles Rams. They all have the tight ends that threaten a defense, that create mismatches. And the Saints don't have that. And
well, I mean, you look at all 4 conference championship teams last year. Yeah, you mentioned Kelsey in Kansas City, Kittle in San Francisco, Andrews in Baltimore, Sam Laporta, for the Detroit Lions. Then you look at Dalton Kincaid in Buffalo. I think we're looking at the old Bradshaw Steelers behind you. I think Pat Freiermuth is going to play a big role for the Pittsburgh Steelers. T.J. Hawkinson in Minnesota, he was highly productive. And I know I'm forgetting people here. Oh, yeah, Philadelphia, who went to the Super Bowl the year before. Dallas Goedert. Zach Ertz, when he was let go, I think he wound up in Arizona. He was one of Arizona's only legitimate offensive weapons. All those teams that we just mentioned, with the exception of the Arizona Cardinals, have either been to the conference championship game or the Super Bowl in the last 2 years. I think that's pretty damn significant.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to me, because it's a space game, it's a spread them out game. So if you got a tight end who's a receiver who can stretch the field, can make those seam routes, it's not about blocking, inline blocking anymore. I mean, that's old school. Yeah, you want a guy that can block, but most teams now put a third tackle out there for running plays. It's all a space game. So I don't care if the guy can really block. I need a guy who can attack that seam. I need a guy who's a mismatch for safeties and linebackers, that you feel like you got to walk a corner out to cover him and take him away.
Let me ask you a question. I know when you going to bed, honey. Yes. All right, night, sweetie. It's Mr. Will's birthday tomorrow. I know we had his birthday party over the weekend, but he officially turns 7 tomorrow.
Well, happy birthday, Will.
Thank you.
He gave a thank you as he ran off to bed.
I heard him.
But I apologize for that. When Clint Kubiak was hired, we're all pretty excited because we're like, you know what? Juwan Johnson has the kind of skill set that fits well in a Kubiak-Shanahan offense. Well, then Juwan has his foot injury. And everybody, even though the prognosis is he'll be ready for the season opener, I keep reminding people, I'm like, remember Michael Thomas's foot?
Yeah.
Foot injuries can get tricky. So that will continue to be a worry for me if it's until it's not. But that aside, say his recovery and rehab goes great, and he's sure enough ready to suit up for the season opener. Do you believe, Alan, that Juwan Johnson's time missed in training camp, the study time in this new system, is going to mean a slower development for Juwan in this new offense? In other words, should we not expect that much from him to open this season?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I think it will be because he's still learning the tight end position. He really is. You get flashes from him, but I think for the most part, he struggles to kind of get up to speed and do the things he's supposed to do as a tight end. If you watch him last year and you watch him the year before, it's the second half of the season, the back half of the season, where you start seeing him play the way you're used to seeing him. You expect to see him play. You look at that Tampa game last year, it was week 16?
Yeah.
And he suddenly has that breakout game. He has that high performance game you've been expecting all year, where he's catching the ball, he's challenging linebackers and making and getting separation. Going, where was this all season?
Right.
So Absolutely, I think it hurts. That's why a veteran like Jimmy Graham probably helps out in the beginning, because he does have fresh legs and he does at least have the knowledge. He can translate what they're doing into what he has done in the past
Mm-hmm.
for this offense. These undrafted guys, these are the guys that have to do something in training camp, because they're going to have to step up. They're going to have to make plays because there's just not enough of them out there. There's not enough players out there. I mean, you can't just run 3 tackles to run the ball, or
Right.
just have Foster Moreau out there. You've got to have the threat of a receiving tight end. So, it's a huge concern. It's a huge concern for me on offense, and then on defense, the safeties, because you got 4 cornerbacks, I think, that have a good chance of being on the field together.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think that Kool-Aid McKinstry has a good shot of starting as the nickel linebacker. What happens to Alontae Taylor from this point then? Where do you put him? Last year, Debo had a great camp, and that translated into the regular season. I want to see how they work those guys in, and you're not going to be able to run 4 corners and 1 single high safety. That's not a defense I want to see.
No, because it's going to get run on to death. When you play a Patrick Mahomes, on third downs, or if you get a couple scores up on them, different story then. You are very well equipped to handle that, that kind of situation. But early in the game, I get that Dennis Allen always loves versatility in his defensive backs, and it's paid off more often than not. But you just mentioned it a moment ago, to just automatically assume, and we don't know that this is going to happen, but just automatically assume that you're going to take Alontae Taylor and be able to just put him back at safety, or in a traditional safety role, and expect it to click right away. I think that's just asking for trouble. Alontae has the physicality for it, but we saw him have some issues as a primary slot corner last year. So if you ask him to play yet another position, I think you're doing that young man, who I'm a big fan of, by the way. I think you're doing that young man a big disservice.
I just felt like, if you were going to make the move, you've got to go ahead and make the move early and let him prepare for this. You don't just throw it out there in training camp, because that's basically what they did with the nickelback position with Taylor. They decided, and it ended up being the right decision, but they decided they were going with somebody else to play nickelback, that they were not going to bring back Roby. So if you're not going to bring back Roby, and you have made this decision, we're going to go with Taylor at our nickelback position, you don't have that battle start in training camp. That battle starts in OTAs. That battle starts as you're putting together your defense, how you want to get these guys in the field. And my attitude was, at the time, I understand that you want to put your best guys out on the field. You want to put your best corners, and Taylor is a better corner than Roby, but he's not a good nickel corner. He's an outside guy. He's got the physicality to play safety, but does he slip back into the cornerback mode if you make him a safety instead of being up near the line of scrimmage? They blitzed him a lot towards the end. I liked it. It was really good. They had a hard time handling him come off the edge. So he can play the safety position, but I just feel like, if this is your plan, you should have executed it by now. And I think that's what a lot of people, one of the many things that people get aggravated with Dennis Allen about, because it seems like he waits until the last minute to make the decision to do something like this, change a position. and you just can't do that. You can't, because I'm not doubting the young man's ability, but I am doubting his ability to be prepared to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You
Yeah, it
need that
almost
time.
feels like, and we joke about, a portion of our fan base thinking that all these players, that they're playing a game of Madden and they
Mm-hmm.
could just move a name into a position. When Dennis Allen does stuff like what he did with Alontae Taylor last year, that's exactly what it felt like.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the people, the people that question or just flat out doubt Dennis Allen's ability to be a head coach. Most of those people, they don't they don't know what specifically to criticize. Uh, if you're going to be critical about Dennis Allen, this is the kind of thing that you need to be critical about Dennis
Yeah.
Allen about. You never see, and I hate to phrase things this way, but it's reality. You'd have never seen this kind of move from Sean Payton. Sean Payton, more often than not, put his, now obviously he was in charge of the offense, so it's a little bit different, but Sean Payton, more often than not, put his players in a specific position to succeed. He played to their strengths. And what Dennis Allen did with Alontae Taylor last year, it just did not play to his strengths, and therefore became, liability is too strong a term, but definitely created a target for your defensive secondary.
Well, Sean Payton had a plan all the time, and that goes back to being a Bill Parcells assistant.
Yeah.
You're going out there with a plan, not just throwing shit at the wall and see what sticks. And for all of Dennis Allen's strengths, his attention to detail and that kind of stuff, it seems like that's a huge weakness, because it takes him too long to realize what needs to be corrected, what needs to be moved, what you
Mm-hmm.
need to change. He changes, but it takes him too long to get to that point. And you feel like you lose a lot of games because it took you too long to get to that point. And I feel that, especially with personnel, that's where he has a problem. And I'm worried about the offensive line. I'm worried about tight end, and I'm worried about safety, because these are three positions where I feel like you did wait too long to make a decision. I understand veteran guys don't want to do training camps anymore. They feel like they can work on their own and they can get in there and just do what they got to do. They'll show up, 2 weeks into training camp or whatever, and be ready to roll because they kept themselves in shape. I think that's just a dangerous thing to gamble with. So not Sean. If Allen realizes, you know what, I don't have another safety out there. I got Howden and I got Honey Badger, and I really don't have a strong safety out there. I need a strong safety. I need to go find me a strong safety.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to sign Justin Blackham now, pay too much, and find out he's just an expensive Jonathan Abram at this point of his career.
Right.
When I should have signed him after the draft, that way I would have had time to work with him and maybe see if he was a better player than this. You and I were screaming about tight ends the entire draft. We had the Iowa tight end circled. We had several tight ends circled, and none of them were drafted. And the same is true for offensive tackles.
Yeah.
And guards. You got Fuaga, and we haven't even talked about him, but I feel like Fuaga's going to be your left tackle, and I think he's going to do well. It's the right tackle we're concerned about. They didn't draft another tackle. They did draft somebody in the 7th round, but this is not even Zach Street didn't play for 3 years. He was tackle eligible for the first 3 years he was in the league.
Mm-hmm.
So we were like, where's the guard we're supposed to draft? When are we drafting the guard? We drafted a great cornerback a promising guy, but where's that guard we need? We didn't get him. We drafted a quarterback. Nice, but we need a safety. Where's that safety? So that's just how it feels, right?
Yeah, and you hit a sore spot with me when you mentioned that they drafted a quarterback. And this is no indictment on Spencer Rattler, the player, necessarily. But the major issue I had at the time is you drafted Kool-Aid McKinstry in the second round.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, I love McKinstry, the player, and I saw the logic behind it, not only this season, but moving forward. We've had that the Adebo or Lattimore discussion, but not both,
Right.
going forward. So I did see the logic behind that. But then you went, 120 or 140 picks
Mm-hmm.
before your next selection. And with that next selection, with guard still a major need, with safety still a major need, with tight end still a major need, you drafted a quarterback. A quarterback that's guaranteed, barring a Titanic type of tragedy, to not see the field for any meaningful action this year. It's those kind of personnel moves that I just do not understand.
It was truly the best player available draft, and Spencer Rattler was rated higher on their board than any guard they had on there, any safety they had on there. And they didn't make a move to get into the third or the fourth round, which I totally understand. We've beat that up a lot. You took Kool-Aid McKinstry because he was a first-round draft pick sitting right there in the second round. I get all those things.
Yeah.
But you didn't go and get not draft. You didn't go and get free agents then to fill those needs. You didn't go and overpay for a guard. You didn't go and overpay for another tackle. You didn't go and get another tight end or make a trade for a tight end. You didn't do a lot of that stuff. And I understand the thinking, why you didn't do it. You're trying to straighten your cap out. This is one of the reasons why I feel like, regardless what happens this season, Dennis Allen is safe, because the front office obviously had this conversation with him that this is what we're going to do, and you may not have a good team because of it. So we're not going to hold that against you because we didn't give you more players, but at the same time, there were opportunities. You just didn't take them. So I don't know. I really don't know.
You asked me about who needs to have a big camp. I'll alter my question to you. What veterans do you think have to have a good camp to stay on the team? Are there any that pop out at you?
To stay on the team? Probably on the defensive line. You need to have both defensive tackles they signed last year have good camps to stay not only to stay on the roster as a starter, but to stay on the roster, period.
Mm-hmm.
I think Nathan Shepard has a better shot than Saunders right now.
Yeah.
Just because I think Brzee has got that position. But they need a rotational guy in there. I think Passanio needs to have a good camp. I think Peyton Turner, we never talk about him, but Peyton Turner, he's playing with house money right now.
Mm-hmm.
If he wants to be in the NFL any longer, he has to have an injury-free season. And I don't even expect him to have any kind of impact. But if he can have any kind of impact and stay healthy, that's somebody who needs to have something. If he doesn't have a good camp, he's gone.
Yeah.
In my mind, I don't even have him making the roster. And that's a hell of an indictment.
Mm-hmm.
But he just can't stay healthy. Mike Triplett talks about him all the time. He's the ultimate tease. He is Mr. August.
Yeah.
He comes out there and he shows you what the Saints saw in him, why they drafted in the first round in August. And then he stubs his toe, twists his ankle. Well, he never just twists his ankle. He always tears ligaments when he twists his ankle.
Right.
So
Yeah. If he does it, if you do it, you do it upright, I guess.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He never just. I mean, he'll dislocate a finger, but then he'll like break a wrist in the process. So he's out for a long time, and so I have no confidence in him at all. I don't even count him towards the roster, but to me, he's got to have a camp just to even be on the team. He's got to have a good camp.
Yeah.
Because they didn't pick up his fifth-year option. This is his last year with the team.
Mm-hmm.
Unless he just has an unbelievable, what I'm talking about, all-pro season. He has to top what Trey Hendrickson did his last year as a Saint. And that's just not going to happen, So, I mean, on offense, I really can't say anything other than we haven't even talked about this, but Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara, not that he's in danger of not making the team, because he clearly is, but I don't know if the Saints are going to pay him. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. That still hasn't been resolved. I think the Saints need to pay him.
Yeah.
Because you're counting on him with your limited weapons and questions on this team. Kamara has to have a bounce back season. So you have to, and you can't have a $21 million hit just hanging out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because if he has the kind of season we all think he may have next year, this coming year, now you're really screwed. What do you do at that point? You've got to give him the money he wants up front, gambling that we can get one or two more good years out of him and structure the deal accordingly.
Yeah, I think, that's a key decision for this front office to make. And I agree with you. I think it's ultimately going to be a gamble, because I think they probably have to sign him to some sort of deal just to get him back into camp. And I think it'll happen. But in doing so, in taking that approach, and Kamara taking the stance that he is taking, it's forcing the team's hand. And that even last year before, when the numbers were down, Kamara is still a legitimate threat. And I still believe that it was the idiotic way that Pete Carmichael used him that contributed mostly, but it contributed to Alvin's dip in production, dip in effectiveness. I think that this is a key camp for him. Because even if they do bring him in on a re-signed deal, it would still make it easier for the Saints to move on from Alvin after this season, because you damn well better believe that whatever this new deal is, 2-3 year extension, it's not going to entail a $20 or $25 million cap hit next year. So that means he's going to have to play, not to earn his money, but to play well to continue being a Saint.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and you're building your offensive, the running game around the skills of an Alvin Kamara, because Carmichael tried to use him like Deuce McAllister in Deuce's later years. And Kamara's just not that kind of running back. Kamara's a space guy.
Mm-hmm.
the inability of this team to find a consistent fullback since the days of Zach Line has hurt a lot. Prentice is. It looks like a converted tight end at linebacker at fullback. They don't have a true fullback, blocking fullback, pass catching fullback like you had with the other Peyton teams, and I think that hurt Kamara a lot because they then started to try and use Jamal Williams that way, and Jamal Williams isn't that kind of guy either.
Right.
So it's like they want to run off tackle, but you don't have the offensive players to run off tackle, nor do you have the tackles to block so you can run off tackle. I mean, it's just the whole thing was a mess. So, yeah, you need Kamara to be the guy that you can have the zone blocking scheme where he can bounce outside, he can get out in space and start making those plays that we saw him make early in his career when he had an inside guy running with him. So, and that goes back to when you were talking about, Kendra Miller has to have a good camp because he has to be that inside guy. You've got your outside guy in Kamara. You need to have your inside guy also so you feel better about the deal that you're going to end up having to give Kamara just to pay him, to get him in. You don't want to have to worry about structuring a big deal with a lot of big cap hits, and Kamara ends up being a guy that you're going to have to let go because you still haven't got your cap straight. I mean, it's just there's a lot of questions still with 2 weeks to go into camp.
Yeah.
And you just don't feel that. I just don't feel that confidence. I'm optimistic, but I don't feel that confidence. And it's because you don't feel like you've got, and this goes back to Dennis Allen, you don't feel like you've got dad in charge like you did Sean Payton. You feel like you got a head coach who is like, yeah, well, we're going to do what we got to do, but, I'm not going to worry about the guys who are here and the guys on here. We're just going to roll with the guys that we got. That's not a good feeling. That's never a good feeling. So.
No, and I'm with you. Just on both sides of the ball. I'm excited about Kubiak. Yeah, there are several players on this team on both sides that I think look like legitimate talents. They're not being recognized by the national media. I don't care about that. The player rankings and all BS like that. But there are still several players on both sides of the ball that I think could hang with literally any position group in the National Football League. But the defensive line. We've talked about all those questions there. Is Chase Young going to look like the second overall pick finally? Is Cam Jordan going to bounce back? Have we seen the peak of Carl Granderson, or is just the upward arc going to continue? Same with Brian Bresee. Have we seen his peak, or is that upward arc going to continue? How long can Demario Davis fend off Father Time? We've talked about the questions at safety, questions at offensive tackle, questions about Kamara. And neither one of us mentioned, other than in passing, have mentioned Jamal Williams. You want to talk about an inside-outside guy. Jamal Williams should be your inside guy, should be your goal line specialist. He wasn't that last year. Now, you could blame maybe that on the offensive line. We shall see.
Interrupt a little bit. I think one of the reasons why he wasn't your inside guy is because they had a lot of problems in the red zone early. So Taysom Hill was the tonic for that.
Yeah.
And he ended up being your short yardage inside guy at the goal line. He got all the carries that Jamal Williams should have gotten because it was like, well, we know Taysom can do it, so we're gonna keep running Taysom till they figure out how to stop him. And that's actually been Sean Payton's plan for so long and no one has figured out how to stop him really. They've gotten him trapped, but when he's close to the goal line like that and he goes off tackle, Taysom's going to score.
Yeah.
Inside the 5, Taysom is going to score. And that's just, I'm curious to see how they're going to use him now.
Yeah.
I think they're going to use him a lot more in the passing game, which will be interesting to see. I think you might see him on a lot more jet sweeps, which will be also.
I hope so.
Cool. Where Taysom's going to use his speed, going in motion, coming to the, going to the outside like that. So, Taysom, that's the one thing I'm not worried about, because I think if anything, Taysom's going to be even more deadly than he was, which is going to drive fantasy football.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny, you mentioned the rankings and all the other stuff. It feels like fantasy football is kind of taking over the analysis of regular football now.
Oh yeah.
This confusion over why do the Saints still have Taysom Hill on this team? Why do the Saints do these things? And it strikes me as this is a fantasy football kind of talk. You want that guy, that running back who's going to rush for 1,000 yards and get double-digit touchdowns,
Mm-hmm.
because that's good for your fantasy team.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a guy coming in and vulturing touchdowns at the goal line and scores on every third time he touches the ball, and you're mad about that, why are you mad about that? That's what you want. You want a guy who is going to score for you.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, that's stupid analysis. That's fantasy football analysis, because you're like, well, I can't play him, so it does me no good for him to score. And I just, that's how it feels. And I see this over and over and over again in this analysis of how they do stuff. I'm like, what does it matter? They used to get pissed off, speaking of Kubiak, we used to get pissed off at Mike Shanahan, because you never knew who the running back was going to be. And Bill Belichick did it too. And again, it's fantasy football stuff, not real football stuff. Mm-hmm. So to me, a good Saints season, which would drive the nerds nuts, is the Saints have a 11-7 or 11-6, whatever it is, kind of team, with multiple people having 8 or more touchdowns, but nobody's got 1,000 yards, and nobody had, except for the quarterback. Carr is going to throw for almost 4,000 yards and like 27 touchdowns and 10 interceptions, but it's like they're all worthless in fantasy football.
Yeah,
because you never know who's going to get the ball in short yardage. And I think that would be extremely entertaining for me, because I don't play fantasy football anymore. But that would be extremely entertaining for me. But it would drive people nuts, and they will hate the Saints for that.
Yep.
And I think that drives the hatred right now. Is, well, there's nobody worth a shit in fantasy football, so why are we wasting our time talking about the Saints? We'll rank them 30th because they're no good in fantasy football. You don't want to play any of these guys in fantasy football. And that's,
that's exactly it. Kamara has scored a total of 10 touchdowns the last 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. Olave has had back-to-back 1,000-yard seasons, but only caught 4 or 5 touchdowns last year.
Total. Yeah, 5 touchdowns, I think, total for his career.
It's something like that. Yeah. So it's that kind of thing. Meanwhile, you have Rashid Shaheed tying him for the touchdown lead. But has about half of what Olave's reception total was. It's stuff like that fuels the national hatred for New Orleans.
Right. If Rashid Shaheed, they feel like if they had a different head coach who would feed him the ball all the time, then they'd have a great receiver, because he would be Tyreek Hill. That's what they kind of see out of him. That's what they want. Tyreek Hill's a great receiver, because not only is he going to get over 1,000 yards receiving, he's going to give you 10 touchdowns or 12 touchdowns, and you're going to get him in the kicking game, and you're going to get him as a receiver. So that's a great thing. Whereas this son of a bitch here, he might touch the ball 5 times and score 3 touchdowns, but you don't know when that's going to happen
Right.
because he doesn't play enough, So we hate Dennis Allen because that's why. I mean, it really, that's the analysis.
It
That's
is.
the kind of analysis that we get. Because every time I hear about Taysom Hill, that's the rant. And I'm going, this dude scores touchdowns, gets first downs. Why wouldn't you want him on your team? He is a football player. He's a mismatch. He does things for you. He helps you win games in real football. So, don't get me started. Although we've been rant for 20 minutes about it. But
Right, and I'm already tired.
I know. What do you have coming up on the Bayou Blitz tomorrow night?
We are we're going to talk about a few of the things that we talked about tonight, obviously, because I mean, training camp battles, bubble players, things like that. That's going to be the main conversation over the next 3 or 4 weeks. But the main topic of our show, and you'll love this because you and I have the same thought process. A couple recent articles have had their quarterback rankings going into this season, and have Derek Carr ranked anywhere between 20 and 20, 20 to 23. So. Some poll questions where is Derek Carr a top 15 quarterback or is a top 20 quarterback? I'm working on an article right now that I'm going to publish as well, but that's also going to be Brendan and mine's main topic of conversation tomorrow as well. That and my articles the last 2 days. I've highlighted who I think the best position groups are in the NFC South on both offense and defense. So if y'all haven't checked that out on my profile yet, please do so. I will be honest, doing the offense today, that one was painful. I'll give you an example. I compared making the offensive line choice, or who's the best offensive line in the NFC South. Mm-hmm. My line was, this is like choosing between eating a rotten fruit or a rotten vegetable. And then I saved my quarterback until the very end. But I said, if the offensive line was like choosing between rotten fruit or rotten vegetable, then choosing a quarterback in this best quarterback position in this division is like choosing between a debilitating injury or a debilitating illness. The offensive one was fun to write once I got on a bitter roll like that, but it was painful to choose.
Well, that's good because it's pretty accurate. Here's the thing about Derek Carr, and you see, I'm gonna use Brock Purdy as the benchmark. Okay, you read what they say, who they say the top 5 or 10 quarterbacks are, and they have a lot. There's one common theme in it. They're young, they are mobile. They run the ball just as much as they pass.
Yeah.
That's the guys they like right now. I mean, clearly Patrick Mahomes has the Super Bowl trophies behind him. He's going to be number one. But you see, Jalen Hurts, and you see Lamar Jackson. It's the usual suspects. Brock Purdy, who has taken a team to the NFC Championship game 2 years in a row and got them to the Super Bowl last year, played well in that game. He's like ranked 10th, 11th,
wow.
Because he isn't that mobile. He's young, but he's this 7th round draft pick. He doesn't get the Kurt Warner love because the Kurt Warner love isn't even cool anymore.
No.
They want the CJ Strouds. They want those guys to be the symbol of the league now, those kind of quarterbacks. So when you have for lack of a better term, a traditional quarterback, drop back passer, they're like, who wants that? That's outdated. That's old football. That's old fashioned football.
Well, again, running quarterbacks get you rushing touchdowns, get you fantasy points.
Mm-hmm. And, a guy like Will Levis, who I happen to like as a young quarterback, I'm not saying he's a Pro Bowl player. I'm not saying he's even a franchise quarterback. but he's not a bust. He is a solid quarterback. If he can have a trying to think of a good comparison, if he can have a Kirk Cousins kind of career, that's going to be good for Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
Will Levis, they don't even talk about it. They don't even mention him
Wow.
in the AFC hierarchy of quarterbacks, young quarterbacks who could take a step to the next level. And he's got DeAndre Hopkins and he's got Calvin Ridley to throw to. You've got a new coach who's going to open up the offense. You've got a lot of potential in Tennessee, but Will Levis, you wouldn't even know who he is. In fact, most of the time they show the picture of him in the old Oilers uniform wearing number 8. I think of Archie Manning.
Yeah.
Every time I see him, it's funny, but it just goes to show you, and that goes back to the fantasy football thing. This is how they view quarterbacks now.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to have that young run. They talk about Anthony Richardson, being
I was just going to point that out.
Maybe being one of the best, if he wasn't in the AFC South with C.J. Stroud, but be one of the best young quarterbacks who's going to take that next leap. And I'm like, where do you see that? If I'm a Colts fan, I'm like, I just want him to survive the season.
Yeah. He played 4 games last year before he went down. He only looked decent in one of them, but he has those legs. He's a terrific runner. Mm-hmm. I watched him a lot at Florida because I'm a Florida Gators fan. This man can't read a defense to save his life. So unless something has changed, but like you said, that's not what they see. It's not real analysis. It's what can you give me on the stat sheet? What can you help me do to win? To make my fantasy football team win. It's like it makes me sick.
Yeah, and he really got the hell beat out of him before he got injured. He got knocked out of a couple games. In those first 4 games, he was on the ground a lot, taking a lot of hits. Maybe he's learned, maybe I shouldn't try and run these guys over because somebody's going to hit me. But regardless, to me, that's the danger of being a running quarterback. You have to learn to slide. You have to learn not to take the hit. Learn to throw the ball instead of taking all those hits. And that's not what they want to see. They want to see that everybody wants to see the next Michael Vick. And that's the only comparison I can have. A guy who just looks like a grown man playing with a bunch of kids. And those guys are like Haley's Comet. They only come once a generation. And when you try and make a guy be that next person, that's setting them up for failure. It really is.
Yep.
I don't know how the Colts are going to be. The Colts, the smart thing would be to tell Richardson, hand the ball off to those guys behind you. Don't run with it. We need you to play 17 games. Get rid of the ball.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to last 17 games, much less a long career, if you're out there taking those hits.
Yeah.
It just, to me, that's why I thought about with Derek Carr. Derek Carr is just an old version of those kind of quarterbacks that they don't like anymore. So even if he throws for 4,000 yards and 30 TDs, they'll be like, yeah, but did he win? He played in the NFC South. It's a terrible division. So we don't care. He didn't have that 4 touchdown game. He threw 2 touchdowns a game, and that's how he got to 30. What big deal? He threw for 250 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. That's not anything we want to talk about. We want the guy who's got 4 touchdowns, 2 on the ground, 2 in the air, or 3 in the air, 1 on the ground. That's what they want to talk about. So anyway, I'll be interested to watch our show tomorrow night. For me struggling with a topic today, we went on for an hour and a half. It didn't take long. Thank you guys for sticking with us. Happy birthday again, Will. I'll, of course, send a message to you guys on Facebook.
Thank you.
Bob has been enjoying the sun. We haven't had much sun. We've got the remnants of Beryl coming through here the outer bands that were dragging behind the system, because
Mm.
the system's way up in Texas and I think in Oklahoma now. But we've had these bands of rain, heavy rain, every couple hours come through, and then the sun shines. So, and then if the sun's out, it's hot as hell. So anyway, enjoy the sun. Like I said, rookies report, I think next week, second half of next week. Then the veterans come that weekend. Training camp is on us in 2 weeks. And the first padded practice is the 24th. So in the meantime, everybody, thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.
Night.